Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving into a genuinely fascinating concept, straight from the teachings of MVMT Church. We're going to unpack this incredible journey of how a deeply held belief actually transitions from a private, behind-closed-doors experience into a vibrant, totally public reality. If you've ever wondered how heavy historical theology translates into real, on-the-ground community impact, well, you are absolutely in the right place.
Okay, let's dive right into our roadmap for today. First up, the IPO of Faith. Second, when renewal went public. Third, empty yourself to refill. Fourth, action steps for believers. And finally, fanning the public flame.
Kicking things off with Section 1, the IPO of Faith. Let's start with a startup analogy.
Think about a tiny little garage-based startup. Maybe it's a father and daughter making small figurines. At first, the whole operation happens entirely behind closed doors. If you want to see the books or even know what's going on, you've got to ask permission. It is highly restricted. But when a company scales up and finally goes public, it loses that tight secrecy, but it gains massive, expansive reach. Suddenly, it's transparent. It's accessible to everyone. And this perfectly maps onto a believer's faith journey. Spiritual renewal almost always starts as a restricted, private affair, but eventually, it's got to go public.
Moving right along to Section 2, when renewal went public. Let's look at the historical timeline.
So the crucial point here is that if we look back at the Old Testament era, access to the Spirit was strictly private. It only fell on a select few, like judges, prophets, and kings. Ordinary folks just didn't have permanent access. But then, about 800 years before Christ, prophets like Ezekiel and Joel started predicting this massive shift. They foresaw a breath of God that would enter all flesh. And finally, at Pentecost in 33 AD, the ultimate IPO occurred. Access went entirely public, poured out permanently on men, women, everybody.
To really wrap our heads around this shift, we need to look at the original languages. The Hebrew word ruach and the Greek word pneuma don't just mean the physical air in your lungs. Oh no, they refer to the dynamic, awakening, actual life-giving Spirit of God. There is a huge difference between just having intellectual knowledge of Scripture, like just memorizing verses, and having a real, awakening relationship with this life-giving Spirit. When the Ruach enters the picture, intellectual lines connect, neurons fire, and a person truly comes alive.
And what exactly was the result of that massive awakening? 3,000 people. Picture this. On the day of Pentecost, you had 120 ordinary believers gathered in a private, hidden upper room. But when that rushing wind of the Spirit hit them, they were absolutely set ablaze. They literally couldn't contain themselves. They spilled right out into the bustling streets of Jerusalem, speaking languages they hadn't even learned. The crowds actually thought they were drunk. But no, they were just overflowing. Because those 120 people went undeniably public with their fire, 3,000 people were brought to the faith in a single day.
Which brings us to Section 3, empty yourself to refill, the internal prerequisite.
Now, before you can overflow into the streets like that, you really have to address what's going on inside. You literally cannot safely or successfully take your faith public if you're already filled of the wrong things. Consider the dramatic contrast of two ancient kings. First, you have King Saul, who was filled with the Spirit but lost it through disobedience. It led to severe paranoia and total emptiness. Having seen that tragic loss firsthand, King David later wrote Psalm 51 after his own massive failures. He said, "My sacrifice, O God, is a broken spirit." David realized there was no hiding his flaws. To be refilled and not lose that connection, he had to completely empty himself of his hidden sins, approaching God with a completely broken and contrite heart.
Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 4, action steps for believers, real everyday impact. So how do believers actually share their faith publicly today? Well, it's a pretty clear three-step process. Step 1, approach empty. Just like David did, confess your hidden struggles to receive peace. Step 2, let it spill out. Once you're filled up, do not try to contain that joy. Let it overflow. And Step 3, speak the language of love.
Speaking the language of love doesn't always mean grabbing a megaphone and standing on a street corner. Usually, it just means sharing a genuine smile. It means giving a caring glance to someone who's clearly hurting, or offering a simple, kind word. It means acting with boldness when you feel prompted. Going public with your faith is really about authentically letting the Spirit's love translate into your everyday encounters. Yeah, even when you're just running errands at the supermarket.
And that leads us right into our final part, Section 5, fanning the public flame.
See, there is a very real danger in reverting back to a private, closed-door faith. If renewal stays strictly private, it suffocates.
It turns into this cold, useless ember that provides literally zero warmth and no light to anyone around it. The exact opposite of that is captured brilliantly in this famous quote from the theologian John Wesley. He said, "Lord, let me burn so that people may come from miles to watch me." I mean, wow, that is what an uncontainable, blazing public faith looks like. It's not about showing off, right? It's about being so vividly transformed and so openly filled with love and joy that people are just naturally drawn to the light.
So we have to ask ourselves this ultimate question. Are you letting what is happening inside of you become visible to the people around you? Are you keeping your renewal locked away in some private upper room, or are you actually ready to take your faith public? I want to challenge you today to step outside, fan that flame, and start speaking that language of love every single day. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, keep that fire burning.